Hey everybody, this is Games Plus James and welcome back to our 2D platformer tutorial here in Unity, where we're going to make a fun little basic platformer game and have some learning fun and experiences. So in today's episode we're going to cover a little fix for jumping our player and moving our player around, and we're also going to cover picking up coins and adding points and all that fun stuff that you get in most basic platformer games. So the first thing we're going to deal with, if we hit this play button here, this is a thing that a couple of people have mentioned that I was planning on getting back to and discussing some more, but now seems like the perfect time. So you run along, you're jumping, that's all grand, but if, for example, you happen to jump and you stick to the wall, you're just kind of stuck here. If you press towards it, you just get stuck on the wall. And there's a very, very simple way to fix that. So what we have to do is we go to our materials here and we'll create a new physics 2D material. Yes, that's what we need to create, and we'll call this player material, and we'll put the friction on this down to 0. So what this, and we're going to apply this to the player, and what this will do is it'll make sure that the player won't stick to any objects around them. So what we do is we go to a material here, and for some reason it's missing. We go player material, perfect, and then if we hit play, once it loads up, here we go. So now when we jump against the thing, see, now you just kind of slide up and down against it like that. But because of the way we've created the character controller, it does some strange things that we don't intend on. So if we're moving right, I let go of right now. The character still keeps sliding along, because all we're doing is setting the velocity of the player to be a certain value, and that will slowly decay over time. As you can see, he's kind of looks like he's getting slower, but I'm not holding the keys down anymore, and it keeps sliding right and right. So that's not really very much what we want to happen in the game. So we have to make it so that the character will stop moving when he's not, when you're not holding a key down. So to fix that little issue that we've got there, we're going to go to our player controller script. We'll open that up here in Mono Develop. Yes, I already have it open here. Okay, so it's going to be nice and simple. It's very easy. It's going to involve us just changing this little bit of code here. We have a little bit for our input and our keys, and we're going to add another value that we're going to use. So we're going to add a public not public. This will be private, because we won't be able to modify this from within Unity. So it'll be private float. We'll call it move velocity, like that. And what we'll do is we will, before we enter any key code, or before we press any buttons to control the sideways movement, what we'll do is we'll set move velocity. Just bear with me for a second. Move velocity. Velocity. If I could spell, we'd be onto a winner. Move velocity is equal to 0f. So that means every update loop, it'll start off by setting our move velocity to 0f. Now obviously that won't do anything to our player just yet, because that's just a random number value. Not random, a very specific number value, but anyway. So what we're going to do is comment the 2 bits out here that are within our moving our player left to right, because we're not going to use this to move the player. What we're going to do is, if the key is pressed down to move the player right, we're going to set our move velocity equal to move speed. So it'll put I think our move speed is 5 or something like that, so that'll put 5 into that variable there. And if we want the character to move left, we'll have move velocity is equal to minus move speed. And as you can see, we were using move speed in the rigid body thing here, and the same here. So what we want to do, rather than having to add the rigid body 2D, have the same bit of code there being doubled over and being useless kinda, after those bits are done, we will say rigid body 2D dot velocity is equal to new vector 2, and instead of move speed we'll put move velocity in there, and then stick with rigid body 2D dot velocity dot y. And now, so what'll happen here is, if there's no input being pressed, it'll set the move velocity to 0, and then this bit will set the character movement to 0. So it'll instantly stop him when you're not pressing any keys to move left or right. And if any key is pressed, then it'll take that value and it'll move the character. So we've saved that. We'll go back to the game here, and we'll hit play. Okay, and then see, we start moving. Player no longer slides around all over the place. He moves perfectly. When he leans against something, perfectly fine. He just slides back down, and that's exactly what we want to happen. But there is one other little thing that this does. So if we kill our player, he keeps sliding along because we're not stopping the movement, because the player script is being automatically disabled. But the camera is still attached to the player, and that's still kind of drifting to the world. So we need to fix that in the level manager. So we'll open our level manager, have it open here. And what we will simply do here is just say player.rigidbody2d.velocity is equal to, not even new vector, we can just go vector2.0. And vector2.0, what that'll do, that'll set x to be 0 and y to be 0. This is a handy little short way of doing it rather than have to write out the full thing every time. And just so we know, that little bit of code here is going in the respawn player function. Just after the player is disabled and his visual stuff is disabled. So that'll stop his speed and stop him dead. So we save that, pop back into the game, and now when you kill him, the camera stops and everything works perfectly. So there we go, that's the basic movement that we have for the player, and that's all. It feels much better now because you obviously don't want to be stuck on objects when you got into them. So on to the main thing of this episode, which is pickups and coins and all that, adding points to the player and all that fun stuff. So what we're going to do first, we need to have an area on the screen where our score will be shown. So what I think that's recently been added to Unity is the new kind of UI system, which is very, very simple and very handy compared to the old way you used to have to do it. It's really, really simple. So what we'll do is go to Game Object, UI, and we'll hit Text. So I'll create a new text object. You can see it down here in the game screen. But in the scene view, you have to scroll up and zoom out to be able to see how big the screen space, it's called, is. And it's quite handy. So then what you do is here, you move it around in here, and it'll move around within this box, and it'll move around to a relative position on the screen. And there's this thing here that anchors the text. So at the moment, if you can see, it's anchored to the center of the screen. So what will happen is if we make this a full screen thing, now the text is just there. Because the way it works it out by saying, okay, the distance from here to the center of the screen, let's just call that 50. So if we make a big full screen game, then it's still going 50 away from the center, but now the edge of the screen is much, much further away, and that kind of just ends up looking weird. So what we want to do, because we're going to have this item in the top left corner, we're going to set this to be anchored at the top left corner here. You can see with the little red dot. So now, if we do the same again, we'll maximize this screen. Now you can see the text stays up in the corner, perfect, just where we want it. And we'll also change the color of this text because it doesn't really stand out very much there. So if we click on the color bar here, we'll just drag this up to white. Now it looks more obvious and easy to see. I'm happy enough with that font, don't need to worry too much about that. We're going to change the text here to be score : and then what we're going to do is right click on our text there and we'll duplicate it, or else you can click on it and press Ctrl and D, and we're going to delete the score from that bit. We're going to type 000, and we're going to change the alignment to be right aligned. So now we know the text is lined up perfectly with that, and we're going to automatically generate the scores as we add them to the game. So we'll just hit the save. Always remember to save things as you're going along through the game. So the way we're going to manage adding the points to the player and all that fun stuff will be through another little score manager script here. So we'll create C# script, if I could say the words. Score manager is what we will call it. If we could spell the word, it'd be nice too. Score manager. There we go. And we'll open that up in MonoDevelop. Okay, we'll just delete these little bits of code here because we're not going to worry too much about them just yet. And what we're going to take advantage of here in the score manager will be some static variables, which means that they can be accessed from anyone. They don't necessarily have to find the game object and stuff like that to in order to function in the game, because we've done that a few times now. We've done get component of a certain thing, and that'll find the object in the scene and whatnot. But we're going to do something a little bit different here. So what we're going to do is public static int score. So that'll create the score variable, and that'll be accessible by anyone else without having to go to the score manager object in particular. We're going to go text, and we're going to do a semicolon there. Now, as you can see, this text has gone red. So this is going to be a Unity UI specific thing, and it's not included as a default thing when you start a new script. So what we have to do is below using system.collections, we will add in using Unity engine dot UI, put our semicolons, and what that does is it imports all the UI bits of code that we would need to reference throughout Unity, or throughout our script. So as you can see, it's gone blue now, so that means we know it's working perfectly, and that's all good. So we'll put our start function here, and we'll just open and close some brackets. Okay, so within this function, what we're going to do is we'll get our text object, and because this script will be attached to the score object that we just created a few minutes ago, we'll say text is equal to get component text. So that'll find the text area that we already have on the object, and it'll automatically set the score to 0, and that'll be the default starting score for the game. So then we'll go to void